that they are in a place to provision or not. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
The head of UNRWA today, Philippe Lazzarini, said that he was denied entry into Gaza by Israel. Does the United States have a stance on that, or has there been any discussion about that?
I would refer to our Israeli partners as well as the United Nations. I don't have anything to offer on
But do you
that.
think it's fine if they want to deny entry?
I don't have insight into what Chairman Lazzarini was going for, and so I don't want to I don't want to misspeak, but I'm happy to look into more. But again, you've heard me say this before, just broadly, not as it relates to this circumstance. This is not a border that the United States has access to.
And in general, shouldn't a senior official from UNRWA, which you say is an important organization, should be allowed to visit Gaza?
Certainly, but again, I don't know the specifics surrounding this, so I just will refer to our Israeli partners on this.
Also, just sorry to clarify on the position on UNRWA. I think when the allegations first came out, the secretary said these allegations are credible in terms of, I think we're talking about 12 UNRWA staff who may have taken part in October 7th, right? That's one kind of allegation. I think there's a broader allegation that Hamas is a proxy for, UNRWA is a proxy for Hamas. Does the U.S. have, regardless of...
That's not an assessment that we share. It's not an assessment that we, that's not an assessment that you've seen us speak to or share. What we're talking about when I talk about these ongoing investigations is this specific circumstance around the subset of employees that you're referring to. Right. Michelle.
Yeah. Have you received any plan from Israel regarding entering Rafah, especially that the Prime Minister has confirmed during the weekend that they will be entering Rafah soon and they will be moving the people out of the area?
We have not seen any details to that plan, and we have been clear at the highest levels that Israel cannot and should not proceed with a full-scale military operation in Rafah without a credible and implementable plan for ensuring the safety and support for more than the 1 million people sheltering there. So no, we have not seen the details of that plan. The government of Israel has said that they will implement a humanitarian assistance plan. They've said that publicly, but we have not seen anything yet.
So, sorry, what do you say?
You've been clear that Israel cannot and should not start a Rafah operation. What does that mean, cannot? I mean, of course they can. Right?
What do you mean, Matt?
Well, you say that they cannot and should not start an operation in Rafah without this plan, but I don't understand your use of the word cannot.
Certainly, yes. I will just, to take a step back.
If there's a plan or not, they can do it. Right?
Let me just say that, again, Israel, of course, is a sovereign country. I say cannot as a turn of words to express our dire and immense concern about any kind of impending...
I get that, but I mean, it's not an issue of can. It's an issue of whether they should or not.
Correct.
Okay.
I will also just note, though, Matt, even in the, if we're going to parse on the specific of the words,
well, you were the one who used it. Not
no. I mean, I just to say that even in the, if we're focusing on the can of it all, there continues to be a lot that needs to be dealt with in the context of Rafah. One, you've heard us say this before, more than 1 million people are sheltering there. Rafah as a region overall is a conduit for entry of humanitarian aid. It's also a conduit for departure of foreign nationals. So without a serious, credible plan that addresses all of this stuff, I think it would be very difficult to conduct something like this. So perhaps they cannot even do something like this without a credible plan.
Vedant, can I just follow up on Matt?
Sorry.
Because last week, the top Israeli commander, military commander, talked about something like 3 islands. He called them human islands and so on, for moving 1.4 million people. Now, could this look anything other than like a concentration camp in your view? Is
So-
that is that a map? Is that a plan that you may have looked at?
Said, let me just be very clear about this, so there's no question. When we're talking about any kind of humanitarian plan as it comes to Rafah, or plans that address how to ensure that the 1 million people sheltering there are not impacted by any violence or military activity, there's no part of that in which we claim to mean that would involve forcible movement of these people in Gaza, these people who might be sheltering in Rafah. I would just say broadly that anything like that would, one, need to be voluntary. Two, I've not seen the specifics of that plan, so I unfortunately can't comment on that. But both in the context of our broader vision for the region, but both in terms of dealing with this immediate issue, there should be no forcible movement or displacement of the Palestinian people. Go ahead.
Vedant, I'll stay also in Gaza.
Yeah.
Last evening, our colleague, our correspondent, was arrested by ADF in Al-Shifa complex outskirts. He was wearing his vest, his helmet, he has his equipment with him. He was beaten, stripped, and got his equipment destroyed. This is, the IDF clearly saw that he's a journalist with his equipment, and this didn't stop them. And just add him to a long list of journalists that have been either killed, injured, or detained by the Israeli forces. Do you have any comments?
We're aware of those reports, and we've asked the government of Israel for more information. But in general, we have been very clear that journalists play a vital role, and that no journalist should be targeted in order to silence their voices in this conflict or any other. And the circumstances are as such in Gaza, where we believe the journalism and the voices of journalists is more important than ever. But again, as it relates to this specific situation, we've asked for more information, but I don't have any other specific comment on that.
And about Al-Shifa Hospital, the ongoing operation, because the arresting happened right before this operation started, and that led us to believe that it is a way to black out what is going on in Al-Shifa complex. Do you hear from your Israeli partners why they are targeting this hospital?
So I'm not going to speak to specific military tactics or assessments or operations from up here. Let me just say two things. First, President Biden, Secretary Blinken, others have made their points quite clear that civilians at hospitals, medical personnel, patients must be protected, and that hospitals must be enabled to be supported, to be run effectively, and to treat patients and to care for people who need help from these hospitals. I will also just note, though, that there is plenty of open source information out there that indicate Hamas's use of many different kinds of civilian institutions, including hospitals, to store weapons, to function as command and control centers, to house its fighters. There also is information that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad use some hospitals in the Gaza Strip, including Al-Shifa, and tunnels underneath to conceal and support their military operations and potentially hold hostages. So I'd refer you to the IDF to speak more to their specific operations. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant.
On this or another topic? I got it.
Moving to Russia, if I may.
I think other people got questions on this,
Please
so I'll
come back.
come back to you.
In the region?
In the region, unless someone still has anything on Gaza specifically. Go ahead, Ryan.
Follow up on what they were asking about UNRWA. When you originally talked about the allegations against the 12 staff, you had said that UNRWA itself was the one that forwarded those allegations along. You said that you found them credible, but since then, UNRWA itself has said that its staff were tortured by Israel in order to get some of those confessions extracted. Does that change your view of the evidence that was presented by Israel? And if UNRWA was credible enough for you to believe the allegations the first time, is UNRWA credible enough when they make an allegation of torture against its staff?
I've not seen that reporting, Ryan, but I will just note that we continue to find the allegations that were laid out a number of months ago to be credible, and we also welcome the swiftness at which UNRWA informed not just the United States but others about this, but also the swiftness in which the United Nations launched its own investigation mechanism and its own independent review, and we look forward to seeing those results. And to echo Secretary Blinken, we want these allegations thoroughly investigated so that there is clear accountability and measures put in place so this doesn't happen again. We want all this to happen because we believe very strongly that UNRWA plays a critical role in producing life-saving assistance in the region, not just in Gaza, but the broader Middle East as well. They are vital players when it comes to food, medicine, shelter, and other humanitarian support.
Your position, which is in opposition, as they said, to so many allies around the world, has encouraged Congress to move forward with a ban. There's now an agreement between some Democrats and some Republicans to continue the ban, I think, throughout the rest of the year. Is that something that the State Department would support, tying the State Department's hands, even if the report comes back?
You've heard me talk about this before broadly when it comes to the supplemental bill that is being negotiated in Congress. These are active and ongoing things that are happening, so I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole too much. But broadly, we support the contours of this supplemental bill. We believe that it is vital for what is required to support our Ukrainian partners, to support our Israeli partners. There's also funding in that supplemental bill for humanitarian aid, including a significant portion for Gaza. So these conversations are going to continue to happen, and I will let those the bill take more concrete shape. Anything else on Gaza before we move to
anybody's got other.
What's that?
I have one on Honduras, but if that.
Yeah, well, I'll try to come back to you if I can. DR, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant.
Yeah.
One question on the Kurdistan region
Uh-huh.
election. The Kurdistan region long delayed election, which was scheduled to be held in June 10. But today, the Kurdistan ruling party, KDP, announced that they will not participate in that election, and they said that the Iraqi top court is trying to imposing an illegal and unconstitutional election in the Kurdistan region, which is not acceptable for them. And this may result in further delay in that election. Do you have any comment and reaction to that? And does the United States willing to engage with the parties in the region to bring a solution to that matter?
We've seen the KDP Politburo statement that they will boycott the upcoming Iraqi Kurdistan parliament elections. We're concerned by the KDP's announcement. Our consistent position has been to support the conduct of and the full participation in free, fair, transparent, and credible elections. We also understand that many of the concerns raised by Iraqi Kurds with respect to recent decisions made by the federal institutions, but we don't think that boycotting these elections will serve the interests of the IKR, the Kurdish people, or Iraq in general.
And one more question,
Yeah.
that the tensions between Kurdistan region and Baghdad is getting more intense and tense, especially after the Iraqi top court decisions against the Kurdistan region. So what's your reaction to that disputes, and how are you going to work with these two partners to bring a solution to that disputes?
I will say we regularly engage with officials in Baghdad and Erbil about issues of shared interest, including Iraqi stability, rule of law, and enduring protections of all of Iraq's communities. But I'm not going to get into the details of these court decisions. Fundamentally, though, the administration believes that stabilizing Iraq through the protection of Iraqi minorities, preserving the electoral rights of those minorities, consistent with the Iraqi constitution, is going to lead to stability and security of the Iraqi Kurdistan region broadly.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Pakistan's airstrikes hit multiple TTP sites, Taliban Pakistan sites inside Afghanistan that killed 8. And it was in response of a suicide bombing that killed 7 soldiers in Pakistan. Do you have any comments?
So we've seen reports that Pakistan carried out airstrikes in Afghanistan in response to the attack in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan, on Saturday at a military post. We deeply regret the loss of life and injustices sustained during the attack in Pakistan and the loss of civilian lives during the strike in Afghanistan. We urge the Taliban to ensure that terrorist attacks are not launched from Afghan soil, and we urge Pakistan to exercise restraint and ensure civilians are not harmed in their counterterrorism efforts. And we urge both sides to address any differences. We remain committed to ensuring that Afghanistan never again becomes a safe haven for terrorists who wish to harm the United States or our partners and allies.
So is United States is helping Pakistan in counterterrorism operations and intelligence sharing?
We are in regular communication with Pakistani leaders to discuss Afghanistan in detail, including through our counterterrorism dialogue and other bilateral consultations.
The U.S. ambassador to Pakistan, Donald Bloom, met with the President Zardari, Prime Minister, and Foreign Minister, and discussed bilateral ties. Can you just tell us what really discussed in those meetings?
I think you just answered the question for me. You said they discussed bilateral ties. So, look, I'm sure our embassy in Islamabad will have more to share on this. But Ambassador Bloom on March 15th did meet with Prime Minister Sharif to discuss a broad range of bilateral issues, as you said, partnering with the government of Pakistan on regional security, the United States' support for continued economic reforms with and through the International Monetary Fund, trade and investment, education, climate change, and other private sector-led economic growth issues that we continue to engage with our Pakistani partners on. And they discuss a number of range of other issues as well.
Can I just briefly hop in on this?
Yeah, sure.
When you say call on Pakistan to exercise restraint, could you elaborate? Does that mean that they shouldn't have carried out the airstrikes, they shouldn't carry out further airstrikes?
We're speaking to the previous question,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Yes.
yeah.
Sean, any loss of civilian life is troubling and heartbreaking to us, and so we want to make sure that when some of these operations are being conducted, that every step possible is being taken, that it's the perpetrators that are being held to account, and that it's not civilians who are being impacted.
Do you mind if I switch to a different topic?
Not at all. Go ahead.
Niger. There's been a lot of uncertainty about that. The junta's remarks appearing to sever military cooperation with the U.S. Do you have any update where things stand? Does the United States think that that's where Niger is going?
So to take a step back, Sean, a senior U.S. delegation traveled to Niger last week to discuss a number of issues with the CNSP. The U.S. is aware of the March 16th statement by the CNSP announcing the end of the status of force agreements between Niger and the United States. This statement followed from frank conversations from this American delegation on the CNSP's trajectory. And we are in touch with the transition authorities to seek clarification of their comments and to discuss additional next steps.
To seek clarification. I mean, is it the sense of the United States that the military cooperation is a good thing, that the United States wants to continue that with Niger?
I would say broadly that our security partnership with West African partners are mutually beneficial and are intended to achieve what we believe to be shared goals of detecting, deterring, and reducing terrorist violence and creating an environment conducive to economic and social development.
And when you say seeking clarification, is there something that's been happening since Friday? Has there, obviously the delegation's left, but has there been some sort of contact? How is the United States trying to seek that clarification?
We continue to engage through our embassy. We continue to have our ambassador and our embassy team there, and we're continuing to discuss with them. I will just note that the delegation meeting it included an exchange of views and a number of ideas. Niger's path to civilian democratic rule, our shared fight against terrorism, including the role of U.S. security support, the importance of Niger conducting its external partnerships in a manner consistent with international law. Those were a number of things that were discussed. Nick, you've had your patiently hand up. I'll come to you, Alex, I promise.
Different topic. There are some rumblings on the Hill and elsewhere about Chilean criminals using the visa waiver program to come to the United States, and commit organized crime. Some members on the Hill are threatening to block funding for the visa waiver program. Are you familiar with this issue, and do you have any comments on it?
So I don't have any specific comment on this specific issue, Nick, but let me just say broadly in the context of visas in any circumstance, as it relates to any country around the world, whether they are party to the visa waiver program or not. A visa allows a foreign national to travel to a U.S. port of entry and request permission to enter the United States. But the visa does not guarantee entry into the United States. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials at ports of entry have broad statutory authority to conduct inspections and permit or deny admission to the United States in accordance with U.S. immigration law. We take I would say the administration broadly takes the safety and security of our ports of entries quite seriously. I'm sure my colleagues at DHS would be happy to talk to you about some of this more. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you, Vedant. I have my questions, but before that, let me go back to Russia briefly. Curious where you're standing on growing calls to the administration to refrain from recognizing Putin as a duly elected president.
You were late, Alex. We talked about this at the top. So you can read the transcript. So why don't we go to your next
I'll
question?
go back.
Anything else?
Today marks 5 months since the detention of RFRL reporter Alsu Kurmashova in Russia. I know there was a meeting last week in this building as a secretary met with her husband. What is your understanding of why she's in jail?
Look, Alex, we believe her detention to be just another in a long line of the Russian Federation's actions of arbitrarily detaining journalists who are just doing their jobs. I will let them speak to any kind of sham explanation that they are providing, but this is something that we're going to continue to remain deeply engaged on. As you know, she is not an American citizen, so our options here are somewhat limited.
You meant she is American citizen.
Sorry, she's a dual citizen. She is a dual citizen, and therefore our ability to engage through appropriate consular channels are limited, because this is something that the Russian Federation often does when it is detaining dual nationals.
Just to be clear, is that the reason to why the administration hasn't recognized her at the arrest as a detention as wrongful yet?
Alex, there's a number of factors that go into these kinds of assessments, and I'm not going to speak to that deliberative process in specificity.
What we don't hear from you is urgency. 5 months in, the Russian authorities have never allowed her to talk to her two daughters, her husband. Why is it taking this long?
Alex, this is something that we're continuing to work around the clock. But again, I will remind you, we just spoke about this. When someone is detained as a dual national in the Russian Federation has a long track record of not giving respectful consular access consistent with the consular convention as it pertains to the other country. There is a clear track record of this, and so it should be no surprise that they are conducting themselves in this way. But we are continuing to be deeply engaged on this and work it around the clock.
Thank you. On South Caucasus, if I may,
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you have anything for me on Special Advisor Bono's trip to the region. He has been there for a couple of days now, and meetings in Baku. What is he hoping to achieve this time around?
I don't have any updates on his trip, but I'm happy to check with the team and get back to you.
Okay.
I'm going to work with him, Alex. I got you. Go ahead in the back.
Yesterday, DPRK launched a missile again. So, do you have any reaction for yesterday's event?
We strongly condemn, again, the March 18th ballistic missile launch. These launches, like all other ballistic missile launches in recent years, are in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. They pose a threat to regional and international peace and security, and we continue to consult closely with the Republic of Korea, Japan, and other allies and partners about the best way to engage the DPRK, deter aggression, and coordinate international responses to the DPRK's violations of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Brian, go ahead.
On Honduras, so earlier this month, former president, as you know, was convicted of drug trafficking, but one of his major achievements aside from drug trafficking when he was in office was the creation of these kind of libertarian free market zones known as ZEEDs that have been really popular with crypto investors. So just, I think, last week, President Castro withdrew from the World Bank's settlement court in order to kind of fend off this $11 billion attack by these crypto investors on Honduras. $11 billion would be about a third of Honduras's entire budget. Now, you've been pressured by some senators to kind of support these libertarian zones that are used by the crypto utopians, and some senators have asked you to support Honduran sovereignty and democracy instead. Where does the State Department come down on this fight going on between American investors and the Honduran government?
You know, Ryan, I'm going to have to check in with the team on that and get back to you, unfortunately. Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two questions,
Yeah.
Vedant. One on Assistant Secretary Leaf. She's been visiting the Middle East since last week. What is she trying to achieve? What is she doing there?
So, as you know, Assistant Secretary Leaf is a senior official of this department who's been engaged around the clock on the many issues currently facing the Middle East. I'm happy to check with the NEA Bureau if there's specific readouts that we can share as it relates to some of our engagements.
And on Niger, is the U.S. delegation back to Washington? And what's going on with Niger? Is the U.S. planning to leave the country soon?
So they are back. I think Sean asked this question not too long ago, but I will just note that we are aware of the March 16th statement from the CNSP. This statement followed from conversations with this American delegation that they visited, where we had some frank conversations about the CNSP's trajectory, and we are continuing to be in touch with transition authorities to seek clarification and discuss next steps. Simon?
Any plans to leave very soon?
This is one of the things that we continue to be discussing with them and discussing next steps. I will just say, as I said to Sean, we believe our security partnerships in West Africa are mutually beneficial, and they are intended to achieve, I should say, what we think to be shared goals of detecting, deterring, and reducing terrorist violence.
I can squeeze one in on Cuba. The Cuban Foreign Ministry said it summoned U.S. top diplomat Benjamin Ziff after protests on Sunday and accused the U.S. of interfering in Cuba's internal affairs. Do you have any response to that?
Well, let me just be quite unambiguous about this, Simon. The United States is not behind these protests in Cuba, and the accusation of that is absurd. I will note, though, since you asked, we are closely following these reports. Protests across several cities in Cuba yesterday called for electricity, food, and fundamental freedoms. I think what we are seeing is a reflection of the dire situation on the island. We urge the Cuban government to refrain from violence and unjust detentions, and are calling on the authorities to respect the Cuban citizens' right to peaceful assembly.
Have you responded to that summon? Did Ziff go to meet them?
I'm not aware. I'm not aware. I would have to check specifically.
Okay.
Jaleel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patel, and happy Ramadan to you. Just two questions. When you were commenting about the strikes between Pakistan and Afghanistan, I didn't feel like you sounded like Pakistan was an ally. It seems like you were treating both the countries in a very balanced manner, telling Pakistan to restrain. So do you not believe that the Afghanistan land is being used by the TTP terrorists against Pakistan?
Well, let me just say first, next time you have feedback, you can find me on Yelp if you'd like. But look, broadly, we believe that it is important that steps be taken to minimize casualties. We're aware of these reports that were carried out, and we deeply regret the loss of life and the injuries sustained. Both the 7 Pakistani soldiers who perished at the onset of the first suicide bomb, as well as the civilians who were impacted and lost their life by this counterstrike. Again, though, Pakistan is an important and key partner, and one that we are in regular communication with when it comes to talking through our counterterrorism dialogue and other shared security priorities. Go ahead in the back.
Just one.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you very much.
Then I'll come to you, Leon. Sorry.
A few weeks ago, in Adiala jail, where Imran Khan is kept, 2 inmates in jail were killed. Has Ambassador Bloom shared any concerns about Imran Khan's assassination or any security concerns with the State Department, or no?
I don't have any specifics to offer on that, including as it relates to Ambassador Bloom's meeting with Prime Minister Sharif. I don't have any other specifics to offer beyond what I laid out. Leah, go ahead.
Thank you.
And then we'll wrap after you.
Sure. Currently, the third Summit for Democracy is taking place in South Korea. Compared to the past 2 years, there's been less media coverage surrounding it, and there's been criticism of the U.S.'s invitee list as well as its message of democracy to the world, particularly from the global South. Do you think the Biden administration's approach to promoting democracy around the world is working?
Well, I will just note, Leah, that we are putting an immense emphasis on the Secretary's participation in the Summit of Democracy, so much so that he gave some pretty important set of remarks. First, let me just say, we are thankful to our hosts, the Republic of Korea, for hosting the Secretary at the beginning of the summit and continuing to have some great programming throughout the week. We know that this is a shared priority, not just between the United States and the Republic of Korea, but also other countries who participated. But the Secretary, as part of this, outlined the U.S. strategy to promote information integrity and resilience. We believe information integrity is critically important to addressing shared global challenges, including health security, the climate crisis, revitalizing our alliances, and we have a positive and holistic vision for a resilient information environment. And let me just say, this is something that has been a priority for this Secretary, but it has also been something that our Bureau, the Bureau of Global Public Affairs, as well as Undersecretary for Public Affairs and Public Diplomacy, Liz Allen, and her team have been deeply engaged on since the onset of this administration. All right, thanks everybody.